You're listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where I talk to successful women in entertainment and hear their stories. Our presenting sponsor continues to be the entertainment payroll company Extreme Reach. They have the most comprehensive suite of tools and services to support all areas of media and content creation, from tax incentive support to accounting software and payroll services. If you are creating content, you need them. Call them and tell them I sent you. Today I sat down with creator Lisa Ebersole. Lisa created and stars in the web series called 37 Problems, which you can find on Amazon Prime and Hoo-Ha-Ha. The series is a comedy about a woman facing the end of her fertility and what she is going to do about it. She's also a playwright who's had lots of plays produced off-Broadway and regionally, and she's a screenwriter's coach. We talked about what it takes to raise the money and produce a web series and get distribution. It's a whole thing. You can find us at theother50%.com for added features, photos, show notes, and the merchandise. And you can also listen on Apple Podcasts and all the podcast places. If you haven't already, check out the Kiss My Age show, which is where women of a certain vintage, grown-ups, talk about anything and everything, all the things that matter. It's hosted by Lasta Drakovic, Karen Samuelson, and me. We laugh, we cry, we learn stuff. Now, as you heard on my interview with Jill Gilbert, the 2019 BRIC Talent and Innovation Summit is coming up on February 9th. Now, BRIC stands for Break, Reinvent, Impact, and Change. The summit has the goal of bringing a community of thought-provokers together from different facets of the entertainment and tech industries to collectively solve how we support and nurture up-and-coming talent as it pertains to women and underrepresented groups who have an interest in being creative leaders. The mission for this one-day summit is to create actionable items we can take back to our respective organizations that we can either implement or at the very least share ideas on how to make change. So, if you are a creative, an executive, a producer, a decision maker at your organization, please make a point of going to this summit. You can get your tickets at brickfoundation.org, and there is a link on my website. I will be there. I will see you there. Okay, here's my conversation with Lisa Ebersole. Have a listen. What do you do?
I like what an agent really recently called me, which was a talented multi. Which
I like
I know
that.
This is my new term. This is what I'm calling myself from now on, which basically means I do everything. I write, direct, act, and produce my own content.
Fantastic. And speaking of which, you have a web series. Is it called 37 Problems?
It is.
Let's talk about that.
Okay. Right now it is on Amazon Prime, and Elizabeth Banks has a comedy channel called Hoo-Ha-Ha, and it is on that as well. And it just got picked up for VOD distribution on Xfinity Comcast to start, and hopefully a lot of others. So I make some money.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yay, make the money.
Yeah, I'm all about making the money.
Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about that series?
It started, I was a playwright, actor, director, producer off-Broadway in New York for about 10 years. And I was writing animated educational movies for kids to make money, and also doing like advertising and marketing writing during that time. And then I wanted to make the transition to film and TV, but I didn't really have any opportunities in LA specifically. So I applied to grad school, and I came out here and I got my MFA in screenwriting from UCLA, which was great. I'm happy to talk to anyone privately about the pros and cons of that. But after 3 years of writing nothing but scripts, I realized that I'm not just a writer. The thing I loved about theater was that you're making something in the end, and every part of the process is equally as compelling to me. And I'm an artist. I like to make a thing. Without that, it's kind of just a bummer, and it doesn't have meaning to me. So this was kind of a reaction to 3 years of not making, but just writing. I wanted to create something that showed everything that I could do that was also authentic to the experience I was going through, which was being 37, single in grad school, and, time running out to have a baby, and not having the money to freeze eggs, but then, discovering it's not really worth it, in my opinion, anyway, because of the low percentages, and, just kind of having to come face to face with like what my priorities are, and that maybe you can't do everything in life, that you want, at least at the same time.
Yeah, that's the big lie we've been saying forever.
Yeah.
It's a little bit impossible. That scene of sitting with your mother in the cafe talking about it.
Yeah.
Hilarious. Like she does hand over the money as long as she's thinking it's for something completely different.
Right.
Than your artistic career.
Yeah.
Like what? She's willing to pay for freezing your eggs.
Yeah, I mean, she's willing to pay. And my real mom, by the way, is like nothing like that. She hasn't pressured me for a second, maybe because my brother has a child, so she has at least one grandchild already.
All right, let the record show.
But yeah. But no, I mean, in that scene, you know, I think like that mom, you know, her concern is like, you're, you know, still acting like a kid and you're going to miss out on this amazing experience in life because you're being an idiot. And at least if I give you this money to freeze your eggs, there'll be some chance of you, you know, having the experience of having a biological child later on when you realize.
When you come to your senses.
You know, yeah, exactly. When you realize you're putting your eggs, no pun intended, in the wrong basket.
How did you make this web series happen? Did you crowdfund? How'd you finance it?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. I initially shot the first 3 episodes with funding from my former boss, from Brain Pop, the animated educational movies for kids company. This is definitely not content that would appear on their site. It's for the like 2nd to 8th grade market primarily.
Yeah, no, there was a scene where you were stark naked running around your apartment, as I recall.
Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely not safe for work and definitely not for kids. But yeah, he's always been very supportive of all my theater endeavors, everything I've been doing while working for them. So he initially gave me kind of the seed money for this, and I used some savings I had of my own, and I shot the first 3 episodes. And my thinking was, okay, it's going to be so brilliant that I'm going to show it to people and someone's just going to want to pay for the rest of it.
Right.
So that was plan A. And
How'd
I did
that go?
It took about 6 months. And you know, I'm very interested in the business, like being conscious of the money and business side of this. So I definitely will touch on that a lot. But I gave myself 6 months to do that. And I said, you know, if I can't do this, like get someone else to pay for it in 6 months, then I'm going to crowdfund. Mm-hmm. And so I showed it to a bunch of people. You know, I got it to someone at HBO, someone at FX. Everybody said, it's great. Let us know when it's done. And so that nobody was going to pay for that. Even like the kind of the women's magazine sites, this was like 5 years ago. So it was kind of a thing then, like Cosmo and Elle and a few others had digital series that they were starting to do. But even them, they wanted it to be done. Mm-hmm. And then they were like, yeah, we'll pay you, you know, a certain dollar amount per episode. That was not very much. I think it was like $1,000 an episode when it's fully done.
Oh my God.
So crowdfunding became my plan B.
So let's talk about that a bit, because I've just heard it's really hard.
It is really hard, and I was really scared beforehand, but I have to say it was a great experience, and I highly recommend it for a bunch of reasons, but I did not go into it. It was just me. Like nobody else on the cast and crew was putting out, you know, emails asking for money for this. First of all, I don't think it's like cool to ask your cast to do that unless they're also producers, but no, everybody else had their own stuff going on. So they'd already done crowdfunding campaigns, the ones who were interested in producing as well. So it was really me alone. And I early on got in touch with the platform Seed and Spark through a women filmmakers group that I'm a part of. And I spoke to them and just like asked them all the questions, you know, just asked them for like, how do I do this? How much money can I, just had constant conversations with them. And they were great and kind of walked me through the process and recommended a crowdfunding consultant who did not charge a ton of money. And I used her kind of like a therapist. Like I did probably 7 one-hour sessions with her. So she wasn't like running the campaign or anything, but she was giving me advice and you know, she's coming from the place of like, this is her business. So she knows what works. She knows what doesn't. And, you know, some of the things I did in my campaign, she now, you know, recommends to her clients because she liked them so much. So we also had a great, you know, working relationship. And I felt supported by her. I felt supported by Seed and Spark. And then the great surprise of it was that it was a lot of work, but I felt enormous support from all the people, especially people from my childhood, high school, grade school, who I just reached out to on Facebook and totally came through after, people I haven't seen in 20 years. Like I expected the people I was in touch with to contribute, but I didn't expect I think like 400 people contributed in the end. And I knew all of that. I knew all but like 10. Yeah. So there was I think like really going into it with my eyes open helped. And like the three things that I would say to people like that were hugely helpful is I started, pre-production for the crowdfunding campaign like 3 months before I launched it. And a big part of, in addition to like getting all the assets ready and, all the things I was going to be posting on a daily basis, a big part of it was writing to those kind of core, I think it was about 60 people, like friends and family who were very aware of what was going on in my career, who've come to my plays, who support me already, and saying, I'm going to do this thing to raise, money for 37 Problems. And it's really important that I have your support on the first day because the first 3 days of crowdfunding, whatever you raise in that time, it tends to be 3 times that amount that you end up with. So if you can raise a third of your ask in 3 days, you're likely to succeed. So I basically had people pledge 6 weeks before I launched, like, yes, on day one, I'll show up and contribute $100 or I'll contribute $1,000. So I knew before I even started the campaign, I had secured like $13,000.
Wow. Fantastic.
Yeah. Which made me then feel a little more relaxed. Like, okay, if I believe all these people who do this for a business, I can raise $39,000 because I have 13 already on day one.
And then how did it do?
I raised $37,800.
Wow. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So that enabled you to do your whole season 1.
That enabled me to do my whole season 1. And like I said, I knew, I would say 99% of the people who contributed. So the idea that, you posted on Twitter and get contributions, that's not something I would spend my time or money on. I would really focus on personal emails, personal phone calls, and Facebook direct messaging on Facebook. That's what I found most effective. I wasn't on Instagram at the time, so maybe DMing on Instagram works, although I don't think people are like hanging out for long chunks of time on Instagram, like each session. So I don't know that would be effective. Someone else would have to answer that.
So how was that for you, just from a psychological perspective, asking everybody for money? Like, was that something that came easy to you, or did you have to?
Oh, no, it was horrible. Yeah. It was like the worst.
It sounds terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, it was like so shameful in the beginning. But now I love it. Now I, will ask anyone for money at any time. And I think what really helped was like, I did go to UCLA. So Richard Walter, who's Jessica Walter's older brother, who's the head of the film school, he just retired. He has this great saying. He was lamenting a film school alumni who he wouldn't name, who had made, millions and millions of dollars. And when he died, he left all his money to the medical school because he'd had cancer, and, the doctors at the medical school had worked with him for many years to try to save his life. So he left the money to cancer research in the medical school. And Richard was furious because he said the film school is more important than the medical school. Like, that's what people don't understand. And I remember at the time thinking like, yeah, I don't know.
That's a bold statement.
It's a bold statement. But then, my brother had this deadly autoimmune disease like 10 years ago and almost died. So we were in the hospital at Johns Hopkins for 3 months. And, of course, doctors are trying to save his life. And we're at one of the best hospitals in the country. And I was very grateful for that. But you have a lot of downtime in the hospital, and like recovering from brain surgery in the ICU, like we were watching 30 Rock and we were watching Ratatouille, and all of his college friends were sending us DVDs from Amazon every day so that we had constant, like, fun, light, ways to laugh while he was going through this horrible experience. So I can say that like film and television were absolutely as important to his recovery as the medical part of it, because it kept us sane.
For sure. All right. That guy's making a point.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back a little bit. You grew up in Washington, D.C.?
I did, yeah.
And did you always think you were going to go into entertainment, or
Not at all. No.
were you going into politics? What were you going to do?
No, none of it. I was like a terrible student, like a C student. I went to one of those, I hate to refer to them this way, but like Brett Kavanaugh, Chelsea Clinton, Gore daughters prep schools. But I was like,
I'll forever be known now.
Yeah,
Kavanaugh Private School.
Yeah, Kavanaugh Private School. I went to Beach Week, all of that crap. But I was not, I was not what they were hoping for, which was like a little Ivy League superstar. I was a slacker student. I didn't like, academia. And the one thing I did love was photography. And so when I got to college, I majored in photography. And it was only, I went to NYU, which was not like a good school back then, 20 years ago. It was sort of like a B school. And in my last semester there, I was working for a still life photographer, and he was giving me, career advice. And he said, you're at arguably the best film school in the country. Like, it'll help your photography to take a film class. So I would really do that before you leave. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I got to do it now then, because I'm about to graduate. And then that kind of changed everything for me. It brought together like my love of writing, which I'd always been doing, and the visual element. And I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. And so I made a couple short films and then got distracted by theater for a bunch of years, because I loved that probably even more. But yeah, the entertainment thing, not till I was like 21 did I know that's what I wanted to do.
And then once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so then you graduated NYU, and then what did you do?
My first job was writing these animated movies for kids for a startup site that didn't exist yet, for a boy and his robot who are telling you like why the sky is blue, like why we have boogers, why your hair how your hair grows. I mean, it started out as a health site because the guy who founded it is a doctor.
Wait, that was your first job?
Yeah, it was my first job. It was
How
like
did you get it?
NYU Career Services, $20 an hour. I just
Wow.
I wrote a sample script and they loved it, and that was my job.
And then was that in New York?
Yeah, and that was my job for the next 10 years.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
Okay, then when did you move to LA?
I moved to LA when I was 34. Yeah, 34.
And why did you move here?
Oh, well, because so I discovered after doing many plays off Broadway and off Broadway
As an actor or a writer?
Everything, as a writer, director, actor, producer.
Okay.
I produced my own work. And I was able to do it at a really high level for not a lot of money. Like my last play, Buck Henry, who wrote The Graduate, and Holland Taylor, who was the mom on 2.5 Men, starred as my parents.
Nice.
But it didn't lead to any crossover into the film and television industry, which is really the only place. There are very few playwrights that make a living through theater. Like, you really have to do film and TV in order to make a living.
Yeah. So then you thought, I need to go to LA to make this happen?
Yeah. So I thought I needed to go to LA to make it happen. And, all my friends, family, and life had been on the East Coast for 34 years. So I needed, I guess, more of a solid kind of landing than just like, I'm going to move to LA. So the grad school was like a way to have a purpose and have a community. And it was something, that my dad had always wanted me to do. And he passed away 10 years ago. So it was just kind of in the back of my head, like, oh, well, it would be good to, have the ability to teach in case I ever want to do that. And, hopefully I learned something too. And maybe that's going to give me access to, people in the industry that can be helpful to my career.
Yeah, that was really smart, and instant community.
Yeah.
Yeah, smart. Okay, so tell me this. Do you also, I thought at one point I saw that you were doing workshops on how to make money in this business.
I am. I'm actually doing a couple of seminars at the Austin Film Festival next week about that. I'm just because of the sort of trajectory that 37 Problems has taken, and because of my age, because, I'm 42, I'm not interested in like going to work on somebody else's show and, working for 10 years on other things before I do my HBO show. The path for me has been to, create my show independently. And in order to do that, you really have to treat yourself as a startup business. That's what I learned through the crowdfunding. That was kind of my first glimpse of, oh, this is what it takes. And I've now extended that to kind of everything I do in terms of audience building and brand building. And
what does that look like, treating yourself as a startup?
So, I mean, when I worked at Brain Pop, we were 3 people, and it was like I did everything from answering emails to the robot character that kids were sending in to, taking the trash out. Or like sitting in on interviews for a CEO of the company because we didn't have one. As a 22-year-old, I'm there in my stupid little suit outfit that I, wore only that day and never wore again. So I think what it means is you have to do everything at the beginning for yourself. And I know everybody, people are adverse to social media, and I hear it a lot from actors that they feel like shame around the self-promotion. And it's a no-brainer. Like if you were launching a product, if you were in Silicon Valley launching, Uber, you would think nothing about posting, every 2 hours on every social platform, different messages, driving people to your app or your site or your thing. Yeah. And I think for some reason, creatives, we feel a shame around that when it's really just good business. So I've been able to be a lot more kind of out there and open and honest and authentic and forthcoming about my struggles and, how I manage things by like, I don't know what you gain by keeping it a secret. You just kind of hide and no one ever watches your show or hears about your work. Like the more you talk about it, the more it spreads. And it's not really a choice. Like if you're going to be successful with your content, like the days of just putting it up and like hoping for the best, it's too saturated. It can't, it worked for, Issa Rae, and it worked for shows. I mean, it worked for her also because she had 4 years of content that was really successful and had a huge audience, but she was also really early on YouTube, and the YouTube algorithms were different. And, it was a different world then. There's so much content now that nobody ever sees that you're not going to be able to just put it up on YouTube unless there's some unbelievable hook that I haven't thought of yet and succeed without putting in the work to promote it.
Now, how do you detach because you're promoting your brand, which is ultimately you and your creative work, which is very personal and very vulnerable. So how do you separate those so you can objectively promote your brand without just being a mess the whole time?
Well, I mean, I had to unfortunately learn that lesson early on with theater because, people wrote reviews of my plays and they weren't all good. There were horrible reviews. And so a lot of actors and writers don't read reviews, or they say they don't read reviews. I was able to do that for one play, but I kind of knew that the reviews were good because everybody was in a good mood. Like, even if you're not reading the reviews, if it's not good, like nobody's
I can
putting
read that one.
Yeah. And like nobody's putting up the, blow up of the New York Times on the outside of the theater. Like there's nothing there. So it's like very clear when it's not going well critically. But yeah, I mean, I had people say horrible things like my parents should be sterilized because my play was so terrible.
Oh my God.
With the Buck and Holland play, someone was like, she must have famous parents in the industry to have gotten these actors. My mom worked in the Department of Transportation and my dad was a copyright lawyer. Like they had nothing to do with the entertainment industry.
Oh,
so just like nasty, horrible stuff. And it hurts for a minute. But now I'm like so immune to it. I mean, I love even on Amazon now, like I either have like 5-star reviews or 1-star reviews. And the people who hate it so much and for such ridiculous reasons that it's almost entertaining to read.
Well, they hate it enough to write a bad review about it.
I mean that's the thing. Like, it's and that's usually and they'll be like terrible acting. I'm like, okay, you can say a lot of things about my series you may not like, but it's not terrible acting. Like I have actors who are on HBO shows. Like if they were terrible, nobody would be hiring them.
Right. Obviously, it triggered an emotional response in you.
Yeah. I mean, it's you feel that, and then it's like whatever. I mean, I don't reply to these people, but it's just part of the industry, and you do have to have a thick skin for that kind of stuff if you're going to put yourself out there, as a performer, as a creative voice, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. What is next for you? What are you working on now?
So I'm the last piece of 37 Problems that I did was on Mother's Day. I was just kind of itching to make something. So we shot a Mother's Day special that sort of is the character a few years later. And now she's, 41 and really needs to have a baby or not, and decides that she's going to ask her ex-boyfriend from 20 years ago to have a baby with her. Oh. So I got this awesome actor, Eric Balfour, who was on 6 Feet Under and 24 and this sci-fi show Haven recently, to play my ex. And we had a lot of fun together. And we're actually now co-writing and producing the next iteration of 37 Problems, which is called The Baby Pact, about a couple who are 40 who had made a pact 20 years ago that if they turned 40 and didn't have anybody else, they would have a baby together. And of course, she's calling it in, and he doesn't remember it and hates kids. So,
we all know that pact.
But I mean, even beyond that, I'm going to launch a project in January, which is 1 year of me deciding once and for all whether or not I'm going to have a baby. So at the end of a year, either I'll be pregnant or I'll have decided I'm not doing it biologically now, at least.
Is this a docu-series or is this a scripted?
It's going to be a combination of things. It's going to be a scripted series and also like appearances and seminars and live chats. Because what I've discovered is that there are a lot of women in the ambivalent mom category, especially between the ages of 35 and 45, and all for very similar reasons. I've talked to a lot of them, personally, and, I think that there's a conversation that's not happening. There's a conversation from women on the other end of it who've either decided not to have kids or have in the end decided to have one, talking about their former ambivalence. But there's not a voice for people who are going through it now in 2018 or 2019. So I'm going to hopefully create a conversation around that and give women like me support.
I love that. I think it's such an important conversation to be having. And I also know a bunch of women in that boat.
Yeah.
And we're so conditioned to have a baby, or if not, decide it's a tragedy. Yeah. When it really doesn't have to be.
Yeah. I mean, it's also like doing the basically market research, right? I was doing audience research, asking, like, I know my fears and my reasons for not becoming a single mom because I don't have another option at this moment.
That's hard.
Hearing what?
That's hard.
Yeah. But hearing other women's reasons, even women who are married or in relationships, it was really interesting. I mean, I think for everybody I spoke to, if they had money and support, they would be a lot more willing to do it. I think everybody was hamstrung by money and support whom I spoke to, even if they had a partner, even if they had a job, it wasn't enough to give them the autonomy that they would want as a mom. Yeah. So everybody was a career-focused woman who I guess that's what they did have in common, everyone who spoke to me.
I think this is the crux of our current dilemma.
Yeah.
Because we're all screaming about, career equality and equality in every arena, and that requires a renegotiation of babies.
Yeah, and it's the other interesting thing that I hadn't thought of, but that if women mentioned was not wanting to become their mothers, like saying my mother did have it all, like she had a career and she had me and she did a great job or the best she could, but she wasn't happy.
Yeah.
And, I think that, and that's not like, I think the happiness is not something that I'm willing to give up, and that the women I spoke to, the ones who were in happy marriages, they weren't willing to risk that for the attempt to have it all with the income they had and the resources they have right now, at least.
Right. Well, because it requires so much renegotiation with how workplaces are structured and how marriages are structured. And we have to reinvent the whole thing.
Well, yeah. What was it? I read I think 14% of Fortune 500 companies have daycare or something. So there's just not enough support. And,
right. And if the workplace requires a stay-at-home spouse to make it happen, then it's just not going to work out for everybody.
Yeah. And it's, I was speaking to a friend last night who works for Google, and they offer, I guess, egg freezing coverage as part of their, female employees' health plans. And, that also incenses me, because if you speak to a medical professional, like, they only recommend egg freezing if you're about to undergo chemotherapy, because you're going to lose your fertility. So it's better to have something than nothing, when you come out on the other end. But the percentages, it's very low percentages of frozen eggs that have turned into babies. I can't find like the perfect figure, but it's in the neighborhood of 10%.
Yeah, I was real
which is not a good bet.
When the tech companies all announced that they were offering egg freezing as a benefit, I was like, is it really? Because that sounds like you can work here and be happy as long as you don't have kids until we're good and ready for you to have them. It didn't sound like a sincere benefit for women.
No, and it's also like it's just not providing, that's part of what I want to do in my 365 days, exploring this is, you do have a much higher percentage of chance of a viable baby being produced if you freeze an embryo, for example. Like, that technology is much older, it's much sounder. So, I think it's like, maybe if you really are in the position of wanting to wait and wanting to do something to maybe have a better chance in the future, to me, that is a much better bet if you have a partner than freezing an egg. If I had a partner, that would have maybe been a real consideration, because then the percentages are closer to like 35%. But even that's not like, even someone tells you have a 35% chance of not dying. Like, that's not a great chance.
No. And I think it would be much better use of resources to create a family-friendly workplace.
Exactly.
Where you could just
give people the support that they're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems an easy fix. Other countries have figured it out.
Yeah.
All right. What is that project going to be called?
I'm not sure yet. I've got to figure out the name for it. The show with Eric that's going to be kind of the narrative portion of it is definitely called The Baby Pact. Mm-hmm. And then I have another half hour that I'm writing called Mama's House, about 3 40-year-old childhood friends who move in together in order to sort of have like a tribe to have and raise their babies together. But then, of course, they're 40 and trying to have babies, it doesn't all work out the way it's supposed to.
It's real hormonal in there.
Yeah.
I do love that idea, though. Now,
I'm not sure of the overall name yet.
Tell me this. What do you make of women in the business right now, or in the country, if you want to go bigger? We seem to be in a moment.
Well, in the business, I just feel like every day and I think you're on these email lists too, get some new outrageous statement that's been made by like a older white male in the business primarily. But even like, I think it's, I have a very close, African-American writer friend, and it's like, it's got to start with like, people have got to start hiring, and it, like, the idea that whatever that Jason Blum thing was yesterday, that he doesn't have female horror directors to go to for films or some version of that is ludicrous.
That they weren't enough. But although, did you see his walk back today? It was actually,
no, I didn't. I actually didn't.
It was a very good apology, walk back. Thank you for correcting me. I will do better.
Oh, good. Well, I like apologies.
Okay, so the fix is to hire women. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I think first of all, women need to hire other women because that's also, another email I got today was about that, about, like, okay, but this female showrunner doesn't have women directing her shows. So, I do think I had an all-female crew for most of 37 Problems, and it was really cool. It was a very different vibe. But, like, why not? And especially in the positions like grip and gaffer and, the like technical positions where women never get hired. Like, it's hard to find a female grip because it's like nobody's ever hiring those people, but they exist. Like, I found them.
Yeah, let's get more women on the set, more women in the room. Do you have thoughts on how we include men in this movement now?
I don't know. I mean, most of the men I know are really great. So I just like these, I mean, I get that this stuff is happening happening in our industry and in our world, but like none of the dudes that like support me and who I'm friends with and who act in my work and produce my work and have been there in my career have ever like, I've never had these bad experiences, gratefully.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I've had really supportive bosses who were men, but who, recognized my value. I mean, even before I did, like at age 22, putting me in an interview with the CEO saying, hey, your opinion is as important as mine. The guy 20 years older than you who's funding this company. And right. I guess when you've had that at a really early age, someone who cares what you think and a work environment where you're encouraged to speak and to argue and to not just like put your head down and take orders and be resentful about it. Like I just had a really lucky startup environment that was very open to female voices in the company.
So you kind of came up with, this is the way it is.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for young women just getting into the business?
I think, and this is part of the kind of the business strategy part of it is like, if you start with the idea that you're, as a actor, screenwriter, director, producer, all four, that you're a one-person business, then, you need a business plan and then you need strategy and you need action steps that you are completing that are leading you towards that, I mean, I guess if you're like 22 and starting 10-year goal, if you're 42 and starting, maybe it's a 3-year goal, that,
we're in a hurry.
Yeah. I'm not interested in 10 years. Like it's got to happen faster. So yeah, but really doing that work, which is not glamorous, but to put down your vision, on a piece of paper and really map out, okay, if I want to be running, a show on HBO in 10 years, like, what is it going to take to get there? Who are the models for that? Like what did Lena Dunham do when she was my age? What did, Pamela Adlon do when she was my age? Oh, is every half-hour comedy person, were they in stand-up first? Maybe stand-up something I should be doing. Or did they all have a successful feature or series or short form like, Frankie Shaw and Issa Rae and High Maintenance? Like, I guess I need to be creating my own content if I'm going to be saying that I'm a creator, showrunner, star, director, all of it.
Yeah.
So I think being clear about that from the beginning. Conversely, if you don't want to do if you just want to be a writer, it's a different path. And I would have different, advice for you. But the main thing is, who are your models? Like when you're starting a business, you look at what other businesses that you admire and that are successful did. So when you're starting out in Hollywood, look at other people who you admire and who have what you want. Look at how they got there and study it and make your own version. Take 5 of them and look at what's common between them and look at the ages that things were happening and look at, who are outliers versus what are sort of the common tropes that you can apply to your own career.
Yeah. Is there a pattern you can identify?
Yeah. Is there a pattern? And there is. There always is.
That's great. Is there anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about today? Anything I should have asked?
Yes. The one thing I would say, because this is something that I definitely still come across a lot is, I learned this in couples therapy, but I think it's a good lesson for business. And Hollywood especially, is like this industry, whatever industry you're in, but let's talk about our industry because that's what this podcast is about. It's not a zero-sum game. Someone else's success does not mean your failure.
Yes.
There's enough for all of us. Like it's a bountiful universe. And I think the idea of like keeping shit to yourselves has got to go. Like I try to share, I'm very open about, all the platforms I'm on, how I got there, how much money I've made, what I hoped would happen versus the reality, what's still possible. Because I think having the information is power. And I don't know why we're hoarding the information. Like I don't think it helps the universe and I don't think it helps you in any way. I think it actually diminishes your ability to, if you give, you're going to receive. If you're not giving and you're just taking, that, I think that has a limit. I think at some point you're stuck. That's my opinion.
I love that. Because if nothing else, we're in this period of there is so much content that needs to be made and so much opportunity. And the transparency just helps everyone.
Yeah. And I mean, I coach a lot of writers and there's so much paranoia about like, oh, my idea and, someone else going to have the same idea. It does not matter.
Yes,
because
someone else has your idea. Just know that.
And know that they've already had it for like since the dawn of time. Everyone has had the same ideas. All you have as a creative voice is your singular point of view.
Yeah.
And that nobody else can replicate it unless you have a twin. And even then, like they haven't been there every moment of your life with you. So it's impossible for someone to steal anything from you because what you have is your experience is not stealable. So I just think if we let go of all that sort of like competition and paranoia, it would probably empower creators a lot more because we would all have access to the same information and be having deeper conversations. And, there's really a chokehold with indie film now, which is like you can pretty much do everything by yourself except distribute it and monetize it. Amazon used to be a viable platform for that. They cut the rates they were paying a whopping 15 cents an hour. They're now paying $6. So I went, for example, from making $1,500 a month to making, $400. And a lot of filmmakers I know who are on that platform, had the same sort of shocking drop in our income from our series and films.
Wait a minute. 6 cents an hour of people watching?
Yeah.
Man.
Whereas, I mean, companies like Seed and Spark, who don't have the audience, unfortunately, and are much smaller, are paying 22 cents a minute. Mm-hmm. So I think like they're trying and they have the right attitude. It's just like Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, and the other popular streaming services have such a monopoly right now that it's just like they're just studios. It's not indie. It's not accessible. So I don't know, maybe if everybody were more open about sort of their independent filmmaking pain, we would have enough of an audience on like a smaller platform like Seed and Spark or a new platform that hasn't been launched yet that would justify, people watching there instead of on these kind of bigger behemoths where you just don't have any say in what your content is worth or even viewership data. You don't get that either.
Yeah. Wow. And I've known about Seed and Spark for a long time. I didn't know it was a platform also for streaming.
Yeah. They started as a crowdfunding platform, but I launched my series with them as well at the same time I launched it on Amazon. And so that was I think they've been doing streaming for about 2.5 years, maybe.
Oh, well, that is great to know. Everybody sign up for that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Was there anything else you wanted to say?
Oh, I guess one more thing. Sorry, I keep having one more thing. I think like another thing that people hate in addition to like social media is networking. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's another one of those like absolutely essential parts of the business.
For sure.
And I just encourage anyone who's trying to succeed and, who doesn't have, I guess, representation yet or ways to get where they need to get, go to as many seminars, networking events, places where important people who you admire are speaking, because that's how you get in the door when you don't have, the agent or manager access is by becoming, friends and becoming contemporaries with people who already have access. And hopefully they're of the mindset to help, younger filmmakers. I know I am. I know many of the people who are my contemporaries help a lot of people younger than they are, or not even just younger, but, just starting out.
For sure. Now, how can people find you?
I am on Instagram at Lisa Ebersole and at 37 Problems TV. Facebook, the same thing, just Lisa Ebersole. On Twitter, Lisa Ebersole. And my email is lisa@37problems.com. Okay. If you have a question, I'm happy to field it.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie. This was great.
You've been listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Lisa Ebersole for sharing her story. And special thanks to Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on your favorite podcast provider and leave a review. And of course, on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out in letters, for added features, bios of our guests, and the merch. You can also follow us on all the social media platforms. And also, go subscribe to the Kiss My Age show. Thanks for listening, and Happy New Year.